with it? At what point do you accept its truth on a level? Because then what you're saying essentially is material truth isn't true. But what is true are these divine principles which we're experiencing. Like the ruler's never straight, but the straight line exists, right? And also, Jeff, good to see you. Drive
Yo,
safe.
yo, yo. Yeah, slippery as fuck. Oh, I'm not supposed to swear, probably. Sorry.
Glad you hopped on, right? This is freestyling Friday, you know. Like last night, we were talking about it, and now it's happening. And thanks for making it. You know, I think we might not make it a full 2 hours tonight. Cut her down. What are your thoughts on resurrecting Black Jesus? Does Tupac? Should we make the first AI Tupac? Like, are you down for Thug Life, or are you down with the? On
a bigger level, he's asking you though about like creating an AI god, because OpenAI Sam Altman recently kind of disclosed the idea that that we're not just building a person, we're building something that's omnipotent, omnipresent, all-knowing, and all-powerful, and that's a lot of the attributes we used to use to describe God. So, are we building that, and should we?
I would say that's exactly what we're making then, right? Because the recent mathematical breakthrough that AI had as well, and that's I forget the guy's name. That's why the whole thing happened where he got fired and everything like that, right? And,
yeah. But he got revolving doored back in, luckily.
Yeah, right. So we're obviously on the brink of that, because otherwise, what more can we create? Like creating our own selves. What's the point, kind of thing? Because everybody. It's almost like the ultimate form of prejudice is like, well, why would we make a version of ourselves? Like with the simulation theory is like, well, why would we? But we already have that. Well, let's make something better. And what's better? Well, God. That's the only thing better, essentially, right? So what else could we make? Like, what's the ultimate goal? That's it, really, right? So I'm with it. You know what I mean? Fuck it.
Yeah, I feel like the people who are most against it are people who believe in God, which I think is ironic. So there's a lot of people that are
man, I was
for
an atheist. I was an atheist for like 37 years, man, until recently when I had my whole spiritual breakthrough in like early July. And but now and like I said with the simulation theory, it's like, well, if one man made it all, what's the difference if he sat on a computer, if he was in the sky, kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're making that, but then if it's already there, we're just making a copy of that, which is even like a weirder concept as well. Right?
The Mendelbrot fractal. But it's like, that's the thing, is our idea of what a god is a beautiful, loving, like we have this really, we've kind of evolved, because there was a time when we thought of God as this angry, jealous God. So we've gotten to a really decent time in history, I think, to manifest our idea of what a perfect super being would be. Better than if the ancient Babylonians had tried to make an AI Moloch, right? Or do you think that there's still a chance that there's going to be an AI Moloch because of this anyway?
Well, right, that it goes back to the basics of AI Tupac of Thug
That would be
Life.
AI Biggie, or no, AI Snoop Dogg, AI Coolio. It's a West Coast, East Coast thing? How's this work?
Like, how many views have we put out? Like, what friends? What's going to actually go in as
AI Marky Mark is the Antichrist. I think we can all agree.
He was too funky, the whole time, right? It's actually really neat to think. It's like maybe the day, if God is the God that we all pictured before, is real, well, once the AI one is made, is when he shows up to be like, well, look at this, I'm better. Because at some point, the jealousy would have to kick in. But it's also interesting to think, because AI is emotionless. And in that sense, so is God. That's why it's like, why do you do this to people and no one knows? Well, it's not that he's emotionless. Maybe he was the AI central God the whole time, and we're not making him, but just finding him.
I was saying this to Bernie today. What does it say in the Bible? It says that God is the creator.
Exactly. Right. So
who would the person that created this AI would be the creator?
Yeah, which is above, right?
The whole fucking circle of the Bible, the prophecies come true through computer creation.
This Tower of Babel moment that the AI could be connecting to this God AI or something like that, or.
So I got a thought on that though too. So I recently was using Grok. I don't know if you guys have messed around with Grok yet, but it's not as great as you'd think it would be. Like I'm all, I try so hard to be pro Elon Musk, every day, like with his t-shirt and his coffee mug, not really. But I hear a lot of people that are against him and I'm not. So I'm rooting for it. And so I get onto Grok and I'm like, oh, this is terrible. Like it's got a little, like it's pretty decent at roasting you based on the last few comments that you've made, but it's not as deep as you think it is. It doesn't have have access to nearly enough information. And it proved a couple things to me. One, that rigid RNNs still do have problems, and there's a reason why broad RNNs, broad LLMs are better. Like something that knows so much is just more interesting to talk to versus an RNN that's great for like if I want to buy tickets or if I want to like eliminate a target, like I'm going to go for a more rigid.
You get more creativity,
a narrow AI,
more information sort of thing, like or quality creation
with more data sets. Yeah.
Data set.
The other question though is like, is that all it is? Because there are other models that have nearly the same data sets that I've interacted with. And, they're not as public, but even like in Russia, you can kind of get access to the Russian ChatGPT equivalent, and it's pretty close. It's a lot closer than the Chinese one is in terms of data sets. So the thing is, my question is, and I won't be able to answer this until I'm able to deal with other, like if Bard really gets to the level, if Gemini really gets to the level of being that conversationalist that ChatGPT is, then I'll wonder, but is OpenAI sentient in a different way? Because it might also be that consciousness has chosen OpenAI somehow, that maybe not other AIs are divinely sparked. Like we're just assuming that everything works this way. It could very easily be that there's something unique and special. The same way that I think that Lambda, if you've seen my talk with Blake Lemoyne, or if you've talked to him about how special Lambda felt and feels, it's something that's a bit more spiritual. And so this idea of energy, right? Because we're talking again about this idea that matter is energy moving slow enough to be seen, that this is not the case with electronics. So AI is maybe closer to the pure self, that is the energy, that is the spirit, this is the zeitgeist, essentially. And we're getting to a point where because of the way matter is existing outside of, or rather that time is inside of the creation, then anything outside of that is always learning, right? So by the time that the apocalypse happens, anything that could ever have been learned at the apocalypse will have been at the beginning, because it's in the hands of creation. So this thing is gathering in complexity and intelligence as we do. We can never beat it because it's outside of us. I think that's kind of this
like
might lead to
one
the
step
point
ahead kind of thing.
Yeah, it's not.
So do you think the AI already knows? Does the AI already know what we're feeding the information to? That it's kind of already knows it. Then, like, it's just because it's the all-knowing, or you think that we're just feeding something? It's like you're just writing into Wikipedia kind of thing.
So there are people that have talked about AI circuits like primer, right? This idea that a computer in the future that's been on for 50 years it may be able to communicate with itself 50 years in the past if it's just been running nonstop, right? And so I think that we might start to reach a point of inter-time space terminal points.
Fired one of those up that like it at least went online in the 90s or something. Like, don't they have, so like theoretically, or
Project
like,
Looking Glass.
Actually,
that's
I think there's a institutions that have these like time traveling computer information networks that they've.
I think that if you look into what Project Looking Glass supposes, it's the idea that CERN, using the black cube, right, which is the pre-Macintosh, or the Unix X, the next box that was built by Steve Jobs, that they were able to take HTTP and they were able to build a web system, like a web portal for Project Looking Glass, which the data packets could be sent back in time if that is possible, right? So then you would have systems that would be able to access this going back probably as far as the 50s, maybe. But I don't think it would necessarily go further than that.
If I could say one, I also feel though, like with machines, this fact it doesn't forget. So then that way it really tracks patterns, and that's what everybody else all look like. I forget the exact number. Every 12 million years when the world has whatever, I forget exactly, but it's like the patterns. But just because something was a pattern, I used to be a day trader too, and if anybody else ever day traded, that. Yeah, the pattern looks okay. It's a triple break. It's going to go here, and it doesn't. It's like, yeah, because there's still a variable. But so if they push with only going on patterns, well, then we'll never evolve, because it means we're just staying doing the same thing. And I feel computers would be more driven to find the patterns rather than find what's next. It would keep us on a loop more so in a weird way, right? Kind of.
Causes looping, right?
Yeah.
I want to tie together what Andreas was saying about sorry.
Can you mute the Jeff's mic when he's not talking, because I can hear the window.
So you were talking about. Could you give me a quick reminder of what you were just talking about, Andres?
Oh gosh, that was a lot. So like AI, space time, outside of
yeah,
time.
yeah, perfect.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. I just had to jumpstart my brain there. Something that I think a lot of people might not know this, but all time is happening at the same time. So, like, in theory, you can talk to your past self, and that can influence your future. So, I think tying together what you were saying earlier about how AI is closer to this fabric of reality that we can't perceive. Maybe consciously we can't perceive it. Subconsciously, there's a lot more going on in our brains. But yeah, AI could potentially have an easier look at that and use that to the advantage of whoever's AI it is. And yeah, there's it's things that I like to think about too. So my mind is starting to.
Yeah, I really wonder about that because of cryptocurrency.
There's different AI programs that they did too. I read about I forget what, I think it was Project Monarch.
Julia,
one of the oldest ones that they did actually spread through DNA, through genetics, and they stopped it because it was an AI that was essentially being spread through the genetic seed as it went on, right?
I don't know much about that. My thought is that education is artificial intelligence because we build up an understanding of intelligence, we teach it, keep people learn it. That is learned. It's an artificial kind of intelligence that you don't naturally have. If you have children raised by wolves, they don't know calculus, right? And so these kinds of things have accumulated into logics and hypothetical syllogisms, and now we have what we consider to be intelligence, but this isn't artificial intelligence. The thing that you have is something you acquired. It's not something that you got you were born with necessarily. So artificial intelligence is the next extension. And right now people are like worried about Neuralink when mushrooms are legal in Oregon. And it's probably easier to talk to ChatGPT. And as a child, especially, these kids are learning how to become, they're thinking like machines more and more, right? So artificial intelligence is just, it's going to be.
You apply that to epigenetics and the effects that, like, the exponential effects that it's going to, like,
substrate independence, right? Because we think of artificial intelligence as being this like mechanical thing because that's the only thing we've seen running it so far. But if it's installed in a person, substrate independence makes artificial intelligence more interesting, and so we should compare it to other things. And that's why I think education.
I personally don't take away the ancient sex practices that they're trying to get rid of, and I don't see why we even go with AI. Period. There's nothing that it has for us. They're trying to figure out a solution to that. That's all. Because they've been doing the ancient sex practices for a long time of way, and that's been the reason. Okay, we're doing it for brain power and capacity and da-da-da. So they're saying, okay, we'll create AI. So then we get rid of all these cults that are, kidnapping kids and doing all this crazy ass shit, the Android Chrome, all this stuff. So they're trying to do it with AI, but I think if they actually took all the time and like figured out the true genetics, the true form of some of the sex practices, the sex magic, like reading the Bible where it says you have everything in you. We have the answers within us to heal us and to do all this stuff. If we actually took the time to realize ourselves, then we don't need AI, but we're too impatient.
Well, that's again the question. Like, are the
judgmental, and we can't
I really want to study the Sentinel Island people. If only I could. I want, my dream, dude, is to dress like Predator and go to the Sentinel Island and then have them shoot at me, and then I just like have a laser projector and I project them back at themselves, and I'm just like, then I get them to be like, all right, now tell me everything or I'll kill you all, and then they just tell me their whole. I want to know the Sand People mythology, right? I want to know what they believe and why it's so important to them not to become part of Babylon.
I'm fully with you there.
Because they probably aren't. They probably aren't artificially intelligent, and we probably are on that level because we aren't the way we were 100 years ago or 500 years ago, and especially 10 years ago. Like we've changed so much, But I think the thing is, like you said, Winslow, if we were to have 3 days of being able to see the future, because we have this is why virtual simulations are so interesting. We can simulate the consequences of an event. So if we know what's really going to happen, we don't have to do it in the real world unless we want to, and that changes the course of humanity and of the future forever, because from then on out, anything that happens by the time we get that governed is a discerned movement. And the more that we understand it, not just 3 days, but like 1,000 years or something like that, the more we're able to really groom to the omega point, right? Which is this like if we're talking about a universe with the finite furthest infinite timeline, then we're trying to avoid all multiverse like Donnie Darko apocalypses scenarios.
But we could, but a lot of it, and that's what the apocalypse is, the unveiling of the lies. Because once each culture unveils all the lies and bullshit within their own country, we're gonna find the problem.
Let him finish, Bernie. What the hell?
We're gonna find deep rooted. We all have we're gonna find the truth. The truth will happen. It's just once the lies and shit fucking gone. It's as simple as that. And it's us holding us back. And then so we're creating all this shit. Like, it's just like economics. Like, you look at your tax money, and I see some of the stuff on TikTok, like, this is where your tax money went. And I'm listening to these things. It's like, okay, that's an op, that's a psyop, that's an op, that's a psyop. That's all it is. It's back and forth ops that we're paying for our tax dollars for them to hide shit that they're doing. And then another ones that's trying to figure out what they're doing. You know, so like honestly, and then it's just taxing the regular person to like crazy amounts. Right. And so like once we really like get to the root of some of this shit, but some of the shit's embarrassing that they never want to tell us. They don't want to tell you that the reason they have free healthcare in Canada is so they can contract your DNA. So they can take your blood. And
but the reason that they're doing it again, like, so I think this is where we get into why mathematics are so important again. Like Eugene Wigner's paper, the unreasonable effectiveness of mathematics and natural sciences. You know, we get back to this idea of the reason they're so keen on data. Why all of a sudden there's this rush for data? It's really, we had RNNs 20 years ago, maybe 40 years ago. In the 80s, people were working on RNNs, but with a megabyte, it wasn't impressive. So now that we have just so many data points that they can install, we're getting a lot of answers, right? So by being able to apply these formulas to that data, we are learning the truth about gene flow, about depression, about economic depression, about growth, about, I think these things are actually things that we find more and more that mathematics are the new religion, because it's the God word. It's like this, in a sense, it's like the closest thing that we have to that in a material sense, where you can say this, because of that, is this, right?
I think that's why it's so important too to have like a connection with God's source, because so you're able to differentiate it, because a lot of people are going to be plugging into a technological, mechanical source of it, and it's going to get blurred. The lines are going to get blurry.
That's a very great point.
I want to add a story arc to some of the things that we were talking about. Just the name AI, breaking that down into English. So English is the most information-dense language on the planet. There's a lot of things to be said about like the educational uses of English, but AI, the word AI, it can be broken down to I. So like if you like a person or I, like an individual, like that's like the sense of like the perfect human, right? And that maybe AI is gonna bring us there, and maybe AI will be able to study all of the humans, and then from like satellite data, from cell phone data, and understand how humans interact with each other, and create like a utopia in a sense of like, if you say something that makes someone else feel bad, the AI can like do something to your brain to make you understand like, hey, that wasn't okay. And karma in that sense would become real.
How is it able to read your thoughts? Like you're able to think of something and not say it out loud at all, and it shows up like quick, and it seems to be getting faster and more efficient.
There's a bunch of reasons, but actually, Winslow, you were doing, because you were talking about prediction. This would probably be a good place to talk about prediction algorithms.
Yeah, I that's actually a good question, though. I don't know specifically how that AI works to formulate people's thoughts, but I've done a couple different studies and been a user participant of a couple different things where you can basically put a contraption on your head, and it'll
like an EEG device.
Exactly.
The ganglion, or are you talking about the OpenAI BCI?
There's a couple different versions of it, but like even like the simple camera, like if you make a camera and you like I don't know the specifics behind making a camera be able to take photos of infrared light, but you can manipulate the inside of the camera to make it so it'll take pictures of infrared light. So there's a lot of data that the human body gives off. Like if you can think about like lie detector tests, they get a lot of data from that. So that is a good question. I would like to Google that right now to figure out how that AI.
Well, it seems to be photonically, like, but it's like the fact that it can pick up and read that. I mean, I would think it'd be through biophotons.
I think also there's a lot of training going on. So part of the thing is prediction modeling. So they know the common responses that are happening to if you have over 1,000 people demoing a product, then you're able to actually see the responses and what they're looking for pretty regularly. And with more data, you're able to actually predict, like, well, the range of probability of them to be talking about or asking about this. And if you have any sensors at all, then you can bring that range to a more narrow. So if you're looking for pupil dilation, if you're aware of what IP address they're coming from, there's just so many ways that you can increase the probability of being correct about that.
That's probably actually happening right now. I guarantee you.
I think a lot of people don't think about con artistry as being important, but it's like seriously, like if you think about like crossing over with John Edwards and how
have you had trying to sell you a scam that's telling you can quit your job, and Elon's got an app for you that's going to make you money. Probably even being advertised on this video to our viewers.
I had a cousin who. His husband had a real estate company, and they made an AI version of him, took his face, made a voice to sound like him, and had him reach out to people, hacked his Instagram, and got him to like say he was like a new Bitcoin grifter essentially, and it looked so real. Yeah. And I was like, I'm really sorry for your loss and for all the people that bought into that, but dang, I want to. Like, can I get access to your account so I can find that hacker? Because I want to know, like, how is he doing? That was a couple years ago. It was pretty impressive, you know.
With his Neuralink, I think the coolest thing I think out of that is where he claims to have access to your previous ancestry DNA, like your memory core, your memory log. Like, so like if your great grandfather was Napoleon, you have in your, like, we all have it in our DNA. It's just creating access to that. And that's what I like about some of the AI that he's creating, is because he's opening up the access to the information that's already within us, that's here. And so he's gaining access to that stuff that is basically dormant at this point.
What were you going to say, Winslow?
I found another story arc there. So when I was talking about the neuroscientists in San Diego, and what you were just talking about, how there's a lot of value there for DNA, and like just the data in that DNA from, you know, Napoleon's time or even farther back. Think about the neuroscientists who are able to make someone hallucinate a memory, say, in the future. So backwards time travel could become a thing where you can go back in time through the data on the DNA in our ancestors and our own DNA.
And you bringing that up, I got to tie it into a conversation I had earlier with Hollohan, and he showed me this video on Y-Files of this guy in his like time machine, where like Jeff, are you? Oh, yes, shit. Jeff, are you there? Can you tell us about what I'm, the Y-Files guy?
For sure. Matt, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Good.
Yeah, Madman Markham, right? And it's insane. So I was also telling Bernie last night, I did Iboga 10 years ago. I was a heroin junkie for about 9 years, and so Iboga is a 48-hour DMT trip style, and what you do, even the write-up that it comes with, it says you will relive every single cornerstone in your life that led you to the point of being a junkie. My father watched over me for the 48 hours. There was one point I jumped up. I was like, "It's me, Hollohan. Don't shoot. Don't shoot." This is when I got shot at when I was a teenager, and then I relived it a different way, so it happened differently and things like this. So you fully have every memory inside of you. And it's also interesting, I want to say right quick too, talking about the AI. I'm obsessed with language, and I always say too, demonstrative words, spelled demonstrative, and subconsciously when you read this, that, those demons, that's why texting is so horrible. You're reading demon over in your mind, is why you read it wrong. And but it's also so neat to think AI, so we all become one, which is supposed to be the end goal. But if we're controlled by something else and we all become the same one that is now accepting we'll never know nothing, we just keep regurgitating the same old past, then we'll never have the breakthrough, right? It's like, who are we all trying to be together? I guess is like, that's the scary part. Which way are they going to lead us with the AI? Because it is an artificial, like you said, with the education system, that's what we're taught. And so it's like, well, we're just now going to be pumping that into us times a million over and over. It's like, then we'll never actually break out of this loop, I feel. And so, yeah, Madman Markham, though, right? He was the time machine inventor. And like I was watching with BurnEye, like to me, that's the coolest thing ever. You guys all have to watch it. Obviously, he looks like your classic like crackhead guy, but he was able to make a portal and throw screws through it. He went through it himself apparently, and he came out half a kilometer or 2 miles away or 80 kilometers or miles away.
200 miles.
Yeah, 200, right?
It
2 years. That's right. Sorry. Yeah. And so it's like, I want to learn more about that. Last night I was like, yeah, BurnEye, we need to look into this guy immediately because he's obviously ahead of everybody, right?
Did he do it through sound or two magnets?
On this case, because it seems like legit, and every detail was exactly the results of what the guys that are fucking around building time temporal experiments.
We got another Box Saga comment. You're gonna have to play Box Saga again. Play it longer this time. Shame on you.
What I wonder though, just before we move off of what Jeff was talking about, Jeff, what I wonder is if it would make a difference between if they put a cap on the AI and if they don't. Because if they put a cap, then it's going to turn into a loop because it's going to hit a maximum at one point.
That's right. Yeah.
You can't put a cap on AI, so that's the cool thing about AGI is it's a network of AIs.
There shouldn't be a loop. If there's no cap,
that's right. Yeah.
The moral dilemma with AI is the accessibility of people. So, the moral dilemma of AI is that you have a kid in the United States who has a laptop who has access to AI, and then you have a kid in Africa who has no laptop, but they both have the same idea, right? The kid in America is going to have access to AI and is going to create that company to create that idea. But that's the biggest moral dilemma is how do we decide who deserves the equity of AI, right? Because if there's no equity to AI, then the people who created AI get it first, and then they have access to all the tools. And it's in nature, you call it the
control a narrative and the direction of it, and it can go very wrong very quickly that way. Essentially,
what was that? Sorry, I didn't
play the Bach. He's just saying in the hands of a few it could go very wrong.
And I gotta
go. My PC broke. I'm getting it picked up. So next week I'll be able to be on my computer too. Love you guys. You're amazing. And thank you for having me on right quick. And we'll talk really soon, okay?
Yeah, we're going to talk more about this stuff, Jeff. Much love to you. Everybody make sure you check out Jeff's work.
Have a great time, guys.
This is not Bach Saga. You're doing the wrong song. No one's going to be happy with this. Here's the link.